Well, welcome, everybody at home, everybody here. Dylan DeSimone here with the 4th and 9 crew. We're doing a little draft show, meeting on Zoom. These are at different times right now. We're all home, but excited that I'm really excited to be here with a bunch of my friends and buddies that I love talking football with, and we were excited to kind of come together to pass some time, and hopefully that this would be an opportunity for you at home to also pass some time with us. So since we last chatted, the team's grown a little bit, so I thought we'd go around and everybody would have a chance to introduce themselves. So if we could, why don't we start with Akash?
All right. Hey, guys. I'm Akash Anavarathan. Joined Dylan and the team here about a month ago, coming from Niners Nation. So excited to talk 49ers football with you guys.
Sacco. I worked for 49ers Web Zone, KNBR, and a Niners Wire for a while. Still working over at the Web Zone too, but pumped to be with 4th and 9 and joining these guys who, always talk back and forth with on Twitter. And somebody said we were like starting like the Athletic of 49ers Twitter, which is pretty cool because we got all these names on here. And Dylan's doing a great job building this up. And, I can't wait to be a part of this. It's going to be cool.
I'm David Lipinski. I'm probably the newest person in the team, and I do not have a background doing this. So this is my first time, and honestly honored to get brought onto a bench in a team like this. So just looking forward to being a part of the team. I've been a big fan of your guys' work since inception, and just honored to be a part of it.
It's you, Crocker.
It's all you, Crocker.
Crocker. I've been with 4th and 9. Man, it's been a couple years now, right, Dylan?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so just bringing content right now, and we've all had kind of more time to do this, and it's been fun. So thanks everybody for reading, thanks for asking questions, and yeah, thanks for watching today. Also want to give a quick shout out to Brad Graham, who's been doing the legwork, co-producing this, and putting a lot into our social game. So today, just going to kind of moderate some fun draft conversation for the 2020 drafts. Niners have 2 first-round picks. Suddenly, stuff got really, really interesting. We got number 13, number 31. So what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about what's topical leading into these next couple weeks before decisions get made and the trajectory of the franchises changes yet again. So, we'll look at the state of the franchises right now, particularly where they really stand. I think right now you kind of zero in on, we're the team that was just in the Super Bowl. You really can't fill in. There's not a lot of starting roles available. So you can kind of narrow that down. Anybody kind of thinking about where they really need starters? A lot of people are talking about wide receivers, but there's actually been a debate, and you can list like 5 positions. So, you're thinking about where do you need starters? When do you need them? Does anybody have a strong opinion on where they need starters right now?
Right now, this is a worse team than it was when the season ended. And the reason why I say that, and it may change after the draft, but the reason I say that is because you look at the 2 guys that they lost. Emmanuel Sanders really brought that receiver group together. When you look at before he got there were a lot of struggles with the receivers. And once he comes, Debo starts to take off. Kendrick Bourne kind of settled into that role player role where he made some big catches. He's still really inconsistent, but Sanders kind of made that group go. And then listen, I know you can use a committee to replace Buckner, but DeForest Buckner is really difficult to replace. So when you take a guy like that out of the middle, and maybe his stats don't always jump out at you, but the things that he does, taking on double teams, just what he does in the interior of that defense, it's going to be really difficult to replace that. So you take those 2 guys out, to me, it's not as good of a team that we saw leave the field at the end of the Super Bowl. Now, that's not to say they can't go into the draft and get somebody, an impact wide receiver that all of a sudden changes the dynamic of that offense, and they can't do enough with guys like DJ Jones and whoever else to kind of fill the void enough of Buckner to keep going. But I think right now, the biggest need for me is wide receiver. We're going to need a cornerback in the next couple of years, and obviously defensive line right now is deep, but we could still use somebody to replace Buckner there. But right now, does this still a playoff team? Yes. Is it still a team that can compete for the Super Bowl? Absolutely. But is it as good of a team as we saw at the end of last season? Right now, I just don't think so.
I think just to piggyback off of what Al said, right? Wide receiver right now, they've only got 2 returning starters. Obviously, Debo Samuel and Kendrick Bourne But beyond that, there's a lot of question marks, right? You've got the health question of Jalen Hurd, who couldn't even fly to the Super Bowl because his back was in that bad of shape. And then you've got Trent Taylor, who I've lost count of how many surgeries he's had, right, on his foot. So I think wide receiver, they've got to add someone that can create impact immediately. Looking a little past that, I think you could talk yourself into maybe an offensive lineman. Joe Staley, I think he's got 1 year left on his contract. They're still not even sure if he's going to come back and play. There were some question marks there. So there's a potential need there. And then corner, obviously. Richard Sherman's a free agent after the season. I think K'Wan Williams, it's his last year on his deal. And then you got kind of this, complementary corner role with Emmanuel Mosley and Akella Witherspoon. They kind of rotated in and out, but neither one of them sort of took command of that role. So you could talk yourself into either, corner, offensive tackle, or wide receiver.
I really think it's wide receiver. And I think, a lot of people are trying to get too cute to look for other areas. But, like you both alluded to, look at the state of the wide receiving corps before Emmanuel Sanders was brought in. And not only that, look at how John Lynch and Shanahan recognized what the roster was. Last 2 years, they spent 3 draft picks in the first 3 rounds. They traded up for Pettis. This has always been a problem they've recognized. And right now, it's basically Debo, Bourne, and Hope. Your Hope and Taylor and Hurd are going to be healthy. Goodwin and James, bless their hearts, they just haven't produced. Pettis as well. And when you're not producing like they did in those first few games before Sanders, all the opportunities were there and they didn't seize them. So I think it's wide receiver with a bullet at number 13, and wide receiver on day 3 as well will not surprise me. I really don't doubt they create a competition there at the wide receiver spot. I know they brought in Benjamin, but he could really be just a camp body, and he hasn't really been healthy or returned kicks for 2 years. So I think it's wide receiver, then definitely cornerback, and replacing some of the defensive line depth.
Yeah, in my opinion, I'm with you guys. I think definitely like receiver, they just need a guy, right? And, you'd hope that somebody would step up, maybe like a Dante Pettis. But there's just so many question marks, as you guys alluded to, surrounding the entire position. I mean, outside of that, I'm not as worried about the whole Buckner thing just because I think that I think so much of Armstead. I think Armstead is a tremendous player in the interior. I've thought this whole time that he's been playing outside just because of the situation, right? You got Armstead, you have Buckner, who are both drafted to be 3-4 defensive ends. And when you switch the entire defense and go to a 4-3, they're going to be one odd man out because they're not the big, anchor guys, right? They're not the big nose tackles. So I think that throughout this whole time, they were just trying to figure out how do we get Armstead on the field because he is very talented. Armstead, that's the original position that he was brought here to play if it were a 4-3 defense. So, and I think that he's extremely good. He's really strong. I think he's just as good versus the run. You lose a little bit in the pass rush, but you still have D Ford and Bosa coming off the edge. And obviously, he can take advantage of his opportunities as a pass rusher. We just saw he had 10 sacks. So I think with the interior part, I'm not as worried about that. Not saying that you don't lose something, not having Buckner. That would be ridiculous. But I think receiver and having that go-to guy, I think that's much more important to find. And I think hopefully, it's, Debo takes the next step. And I don't, to me, he looks like a really good wide receiver too, but you never know. He can be somebody like, Steve Smith, who turned into a wide receiver 1 and ended up being like maybe, one of the, or if not, the Panthers' best receiver of all time. I mean, borderline Hall of Famer. So I never put limits on like what a guy can be because I think athletes are always, out to kind of prove us wrong, right? The media, the fans, all that, right? A lot of them have chips on their shoulders and you don't know what drives certain players. But I'd say right now, just looking at it from an outside in, there's way too many question marks surrounding the receiver position. And if there's any spot that can kind of hold the 49ers back, I think it's that.
So receiver seems to be the consensus, and, no surprise there. That's been the year-long consensus and maybe why they traded DeForest Buckner, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I was doing a mock draft on Draft Network last night, and it came to my spot, and all 3 were available. So if all 3 were available, who are you guys taking? And by that, I mean Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, and Henry Ruggs.
I'll kick this off. And so I wrote a little bit about it last week and why I don't think, Jerry Jeudy necessarily fits the mold of what Kyle Shanahan looks for in a wide receiver. So I don't think it's Jeudy, and I think it comes down to the other two guys. But when you watch CeeDee Lamb on film, his ability to make physical plays after the catch, I think he had 11 yards after the catch per reception, which was fifth among all receivers, which was really good. His ball skills going up to, just catch the ball was phenomenal. His run blocking was something that I think the 49ers offensive staff will really fall in love with. And I think he can complement Deebo Samuel as well, playing on the outside. So of those three guys, if you had a choice, I would go with CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, I'm with you on that because, when I think of what the 49ers need, right, and it's not just a body, it's a wide receiver one. And he might not be that this year, right, whoever they draft. Probably won't be that this year, but you look to kind of build on that. And even if he's as good as maybe Deebo was last year, and you have somebody just equally as talented but brings a different, element to the game, a different aspect, right? When it comes to, comparing the three, you have Jeudy. Like you said, that physicality part kind of bothers me a little bit because when you're thinking about wide receiver one, like I need a guy that's going to get it no matter what, right? And if you're picking at 13, I'm not picking a guy to be a complementary piece. So even when it comes to Ruggs or Jeudy, I just think that they probably are a little bit more suited of playing off of someone and not really being the guy. And we saw that even at Alabama, right? Ruggs was the third most productive receiver that they had. Jeudy was the second most productive receiver that they had and primarily played in the slot. Devontae Smith was their guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was the guy. That he played big. He had the complete game. And I think that something like that for them continues in the NFL and kind of works in their favor, even like guys like Ruggs, right? I think Ruggs will be better being able to play off of, a couple of other guys, kind of like what we saw with Mecole Hardman, and not have to be forced into a position where he has to be the guy. Because I don't know if that's his skill set. He could be, but I just don't really see that complete part of his game right now.
Yeah, I think Lamb is the top guy too out of those three. And I agree with the Croc said you're looking for a guy right now to be a one. And at 13, you're not going to take somebody who you're going to target a few times a game who's going to be a deep threat. I do think Ruggs does fall into more of that where I'm not going to call him a gimmick player because I think he's better than that. But I would not take Ruggs with the 13th pick. I do think I have a higher opinion of Jeudy. I think Jeudy can be a one. I like him a lot. But I'll be honest with you. I don't think they're going to take a receiver at 13. I think they're going to take a receiver later, but I don't think it's going to be at 13. I do want to throw some numbers out at you guys real quick though with the receiver group. So you look at who's coming back, and Benjamin will see. Like someone said earlier, like he's been primarily returning kicks. He hasn't really been doing a lot of receiving lately. So we'll see if he even makes the team. Goodwin, I guess we're all assuming is not going to be there. But you look at the career stats for the guys they have left. Kendrick Bourne has in his career 1,102 yards. Deebo had a great first season, 820 yards. Pettis 576 career yards. Taylor 645. Richie James, who for whatever reason hasn't gotten a lot of chances, 295. And Hurd hasn't seen the field yet. So there is not a lot of experience there. There's not a lot of guys we think we can count on Deebo, but there's not really anybody that we know is going out there and saying that's our guy. We know that guy's going to be there. We know that guy's going to get us 5 or 6 catches a game in that receiver group. And that's a little scary. So yeah, at 13, Croc brought up a good point. If you're going to get somebody there, it's got to be a dog. It's got to be somebody that is going to be a number one type guy picking that high. So.
Yeah, I agree on a lot of these points. I mean, I definitely think it's Lamb at 13. If he's there, I think that's the pick. Is he going to be there? It's going to be close. It's going to be real close. Could depend how those top 12 picks break down. But why I like Lamb is the main reason you guys hit on. I mean, yeah, the comp is, Hopkins seems to be who he's going to comp to the most, but it's the way he runs, man. I mean, he just runs like his hair's on fire. And he's got that, what I call freight train speed. Like, you give him his steps after the catch, and when he catches it in motion, or even when he's stopped and turns and pivots, he gets his 3 steps in. He is running like a runaway freight train, not to mention his run blocking. I just think it's the obvious fit. Like, him and Deebo and Kittle blocking together would terrify me. And what that would do for Shanahan's run game would be incredible. I do like Jeudy as a route runner, but I thought Akash had a really good article about how he was similar to Pettis, and we honestly don't want to see some of those traits right now. We want to see if Pettis can work out. But, and Ruggs is interesting. I don't know if Ruggs is interesting enough to me at 13, but if we want to diversify the receiving core and bring a different element, Ruggs absolutely does that. But at 13, a guy that just simply changes the dynamics of your receiving core, I think that's the type of receiver you can find more on day 2 or day 3 if you're just looking for that spread the field, jet sweep motion dynamic.
Yeah, I think a comp that 49ers fans will enjoy, especially with Lamb's, after the catch ability. He has a lot of George Kittle after the catch, doesn't get tackled very easily. He's extremely hard to bring down. And, the more you watch him, the more you kind of get that type of a feel.
So again, a lot of you guys agreeing here in this kind of collective analysis, painting a picture of what may or may not happen. But so say Lamb's off the board, and then you have Judy and Ruggs there. Maybe they're not pressed to take a receiver. Maybe that's the situation where they're like, okay, maybe there's a better player we could take here and we can take our receiver later on. Who's the player you think they might want to take at 13 if they stay there? Any names come to mind?
I kind of don't know. Usually the Niners, I go to the draft with the Niners and I have a couple guys I figure that this is where it's going to go type thing. I don't have any idea this year. I don't know if they're looking at a tackle to replace Staley. I don't know if they're saying, hey, Sherman, Williams, and Witherspoon are all free agents after the season. We need a corner. I don't know if they're saying our wide receiver group needs help right now, but it's so deep at receiver. Their guy has to be there at 13, or I think they're going to wait. I don't know if they feel the need to replace Buckner. I don't know where they are, and I'm going to be surprised. I should say not surprised with where they go, because it could go in so many different ways. So for me, I've been thinking about this a lot. And I've been going back and forth a lot. Cornerback really scares me when I think of the long-term thing. And we look at the Niners, and they always say we want to build this sustainable winner, right? So they're not necessarily picking for, we got to pick for 2020. We need help right now. They're going to pick for the next, who's going to help us for this year and next year and the year after. So I just feel like cornerback is just going to be such an issue with Sherman aging and these guys being free agents. And listen, Witherspoon really he's been inconsistent anyway. So my pick, I'm going to say CJ Henderson. I'm going to say that's the guy that they go with. And then they'll either trade back for more picks to address receiver and anything else, or just address receiver at 31. But I think it's going to be defense. Maybe somebody like Kinlaw could be a possibility, the defensive tackle, but I'm going to say CJ Henderson. That's going to be my pick today. We'll see how I feel tomorrow. But for right now, I'm going to say CJ Henderson.
So just to, this goes back to the question you asked earlier, right? So what position group do we address, as an area of need? And so I'd mention either offensive tackle or corner. So I think there's like consensus for tackles that are sort of at the top of this draft. Haven't watched a ton of them, but I feel like Wirfs from Iowa seems to be the best fit with what the Niners are trying to do, both his size and kind of physicality. So if he was there, I would jump all over that. I know it's tough because you have Staley and McGlinchey for the season, but now you have, your future tackles in McGlinchey and Wirfs kind of set up, and you don't have to worry about that position. So I would lean that way over corner, where I know Croc's really high on CJ Henderson, but to me, corner is one of those positions that's like really difficult to project and translate from college to the NFL. And I feel like you can hit on a day 2 or day 3 prospect. I mean, look at the guys that play for the 49ers right now. Richard Sherman, 5th round pick. Emmanuel Mosley, undrafted free agent. Akello Witherspoon, 3rd round pick, right? So I feel like you could find guys, in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round who could be just as productive as CJ Henderson.
So I've already talked enough about Lamb, so I'm just going to punt on him. I think you all know how I feel about him in that position for us real clear at this point. Henderson at 13, absolutely, just for the CB2 competition. Like, let's face it, Witherspoon's not where he wanted to be. Mosley played some great downs, but I don't think we absolutely want to pot commit to him to CB2 at this point. So Henderson at 13 would make a lot of sense. I really like Kinlaw a lot. I just don't know if we're going to go interior DL at 13 because we do have some depth there. But I'll tell you, the one scenario that really interests me would be very similar to when Lynch drafted McGlinchey. That was a total curveball. I think all of us at that point, like I know personally for me, I was doing backflips because I thought we were going to draft Derwin James at that point. But then he immediately drafted McGlinchey, and then we wake up the next day that Trent Bounds has been traded. I like Wirfs as well. I personally think Becton's a little bit more of a fit for the Shanahan offense due to his athleticism. But if Becton is drafted, I think that absolutely means that Staley has already made his wishes known to Lynch that he was planning on retiring, because I just can't see us drafting Becton and sliding him at guard for a year. I really hope Staley's back this year. I hope we can. I really like to see us make another run with him. I really hope he's not retiring once he came back after his injury. But that would be my wild card is tackle at 13 and what that means for Staley and the organization.
Brunskill was fantastic last year at tackle. And I know he's sort of the front runner to start at guard right now, but when you think about how well he played in pass protection, maybe they like what they have there, and they also seem to like Justin Skule. So I agree that tackle looks like a big need because we don't know what's going to happen with Staley, and a left tackle is obviously a huge part of any team. But I wonder how they feel about those guys. I wonder how they feel about Skule and Brunskill, and maybe they would give them pause to draft a tackle because they have sort of those two guys in waiting that they're developing. And Brunskill, I think you can plug in. I think you plug him in right now, to be honest with you. He was terrific last year. So that's something I think to keep an eye on too.
On Skule, I think it was the Packers, the Sunday Night Football game. I was there when he got benched after that first series. It was ugly. So I hope he picks it up, after this offseason. But
what was interesting? I'm sorry, not to cut you off, but what was interesting, I thought in the Super Bowl when Staley went out, I thought for sure Brunskill was going to go in, and they put Skule in.
That's true.
So I was right. So there's got to be some kind of faith in him there. And I think he's more a developmental guy where Brunskill can step in right now. But you have to wonder if they think he's okay. Staley's going to play this year, but we liked the trajectory that Skule has, that maybe 2 years from now he's ready to play. Just food for thought if they don't take a tackle in the draft.
That's a good point. Yep.
What do you think, Croc, if they don't go wide receiver at 13? CJ Henderson?
I would like CJ Henderson, but I don't know. I just don't see them taking cornerback for some of the reasons that Akash mentioned. I think one thing I'll say about the cornerback position, you can fill that spot with just guys that are very serviceable. But when you want that guy, you know what I'm saying? When you want that guy that's like a Ramsey, you want that guy that's like a Stephon Gilmore. You usually have to take those guys in the first round. It's very rare that you get a Casey Hayward or a Chris Harris Jr., a guy that ends up being an elite, talented cornerback, and you get him later in the draft. You can get serviceable guys later, and they can do well, like what we've seen. But when you want that guy that has all the tools, all the intangibles, you typically have to take them a little bit higher. And I think C.J. Henderson, he's one of those guys, man. I had some cut-ups made, but he's one of those guys. I know that a lot of people point at the tackling. It is probably a little bit more inconsistent than what you would like. I think it kind of has taken on this life where it's just this just horrible. He's just the worst tackling corner ever, and that's not the case. It's not bad like that, but that's what people would lead you to believe. But everything else that he brings, man, I mean, he has easy coverage skills, very fluid, very good feet. His turn and run is good. His running with receivers is effortlessly. You would think that the receivers he's running with are slow because of how easy it is for him to run with guys. And when you're talking about coverage skills, that's a big deal to me, to be able to cover any type of guy, any type of way, anywhere, whether it's outside, whether it's slot. And there aren't a lot of guys that you kind of really know have that ability. Now, you might luck into it and get a guy like AJ Terrell. And, he's a talented kid. And maybe you're able to get him at a 31. And he ends up being that guy. I could see something like that. But I know Henderson, as far as how he's viewed as a prospect, he's high and he's different than anything that the 49ers currently have on their roster at cornerback.
Two things on CJ Henderson. I think it's, Deion Sanders once said, you get paid to cover, not tackle, right? So
right.
That's the big thing on Henderson. The second thing, the one clip that sticks out is the play against Jamar Chase, the LSU wide receiver. He ran with him. He was right in his hip pocket, and then he makes a deflection in the end zone, and it was a fantastic play. And and the type of play that you see from like a number one, shutdown type corner. So,
right. Well, the reason why that play was so big, in my opinion, is because, yeah, he recovered and broke up the ball. Probably should have picked it, but it's how he was able to recover, right? He wasn't set. He got ready late, coming down. The receiver took off, and because he has that speed and, a guy can kind of get in front of him and he doesn't have to panic, he was able to catch back up, not panic and be able to play the ball in the air. And those are things sometimes when you have a guy that maybe runs a 4.5 or, even 4.48s where they're fast, they can run, but do they have that type of speed to where they can catch up in any type of situation and not feel like rushed or in a panic and end up drawing a flag? And in the NFL, that flag would end up being on the 1 yard line in that situation. So those are the things with Henderson that I really pay a lot of attention to. And I think, there's certain things that he does that just come natural because he has elite traits. And he's a high, very, very high ceiling guy, and actually has the feeling to back it up as well.
So let's slide down the board a little bit. 31 and some of the prospects being talked about at that position. Guys you've kind of thought about as options there, or maybe you guys are thinking about trading back. Anybody want to start there?
I think they're going to trade it. Personally, I think they're going to trade it and get a couple more picks and address things again, just because the receiver is so deep. And Shanahan has his eye on some receiver, and we're going to be like, well, where did that come from? Somebody he's been looking at. But for the sake of making the pick, the name that I wrote down was Jalen Reagor, the receiver. I think he's on TCU. I think really fast. And I think at the end of the first is when they get that receiver, or if they trade down, that next pick is when they get it. I really feel like 13 is going to be probably a defensive guy. And then Shanahan, he'll have his eye on somebody. And you look at kind of where he's taking these receivers, Pettis and Debo, these second-round guys, he kind of has his eye on. So that's what I'm going to go for that. I think if they don't trade it, odds are I think they do. But if they don't, I'm going to go with somebody like Reagor, receiver. I know Pittman's been somebody I've seen out there a lot. Who's somebody that I like. Definitely a guy like that, I'll say.
I would definitely much rather stay at 13. I've made a case for that and trade from 31. That to me would really be the ideal thing to do, just because the teams that if they need a quarterback or if any tackles are still left on the board, that extra year of player control is worth so much more than just pick 33 and 34. So that's really a spot where guys want to trade up for. And obviously what we do at 13 is going to dictate who should be at 31. So, I personally would really like to trade back. That being said, if the right partner's there, obviously then we don't have to pick to day 3. So whatever we don't do, if we go wide receiver at 13, I definitely want to go cornerback at 31. And although people will probably start screaming about, oh, you didn't get the right value for that guy, well, you don't got to pick till day 3. You got to suit your best second need. I think we've all agreed it's wide receiver and cornerback as our number 1 and 2 needs to plug a guy in for next year. So whatever we do at 13, do the other at 31. If you can't trade it.
Yeah, and to double down kind of what you guys have said, I think they go lineman, either offensive or defensive at 13. And then at 31, I think you got to trade out of that pick. I said this yesterday, but when you do a mock draft, say you stay at 31, the next pick's at 156, and a lot of talent flies off the board in those like 120 selections. And that's when you realize you're like, oh, crap, like you got to trade back and accumulate more picks, especially in this draft. Where there haven't been pro days, you have an incomplete data set from the combine. Medicals are kind of questionable because you can't, interview these guys in person or bring them in your facility. So you got to have, more darts to throw at the board, so to speak, so you can hit on some guys. So I think you can trade, back out of 31. I've seen, the Browns as a potential option at 41. Jets, I think, are mid-40s. So I think you can trade back a couple times. The receiver I would, watch for is Michael Pittman out of USC. 6'4" guy, has good frame, good ball skills. I think he could fit this offense again as a compliment to Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, I think I'm big on kind of staying put. Obviously if they trade back, I wouldn't be upset with that. But this team, obviously you want to grab guys for the future, but also right now too. And the 49ers, at the end of the day, they need like 2 guys that are going to contribute for this season. And the 49ers have been really good acquiring talent that contribute in later rounds as well. So I know a lot of people want, let's just go with the more picks we can get. But I'm good with, okay, you draft a guy at 13 that's more of an elite, talented type guy. You draft a guy at 31 who's going to come in and contribute right away. But then you also have about 4 or 5 picks between the 5th and 7th rounds. And in those rounds, kind of been the money rounds for the 49ers, where they've been able to definitely, they've been able to acquire a lot of talent that has played and really contributed. So if you have guys at 13 and 31 where you think those guys are more higher end talent, obviously there's always a chance to miss, but those guys are, a little higher end talent, but they always find guys a little bit later, maybe you get 1 or 2 guys that are able to contribute. And, that's kind of the recipe. Because, what are we trading for? When you move back from 31, it's like, okay, I want to move back from 31, give up a 5th-year option on players just to gain a 3rd-round pick that, last year 49ers drafted, Hurd, and we haven't even seen him. We don't even know he broke his back. We don't even know if he's ever going to play. So it's like, I get it in the sense of compiling more picks, but if I'm at 31 and there's a guy I really like, I take that guy instead of moving back and maybe finding somebody that I kind of like in the 3rd round. Yeah, and you guys talked about the combines and stuff. Most of the guys, those 1st-round guys that you're probably going to take at 31, you have all your medical stuff done on them. You have all the testing and stuff. The guys that you're going to see in the 2nd and 3rd rounds, maybe they weren't invited to the combine. And we're seeing right now, these dudes got fake times going and all type of crazy stuff. And again, don't know about the medical side of some of these guys. So me personally, if I'm the 49ers and there's a guy I really love at 13, I'm taking him. If there's a guy I really love at 31 and I want that 5th-year option on this guy, I'm taking him.
Yeah, I think, it's funny about trading back. It's kind of like reminds me of like back in the day where if you had on a street, there's like your Target, Gemco, all your different stores. Everyone wants to get the best value. But, what's the point? Like the elite talent is top heavy for a reason. So if I can save 10 cents, and buy the tie here versus buying it there, sometimes you just do it. You just got to go with, there's a reason these rounds are stacked this way. There's a reason top-end talent goes first. Unless you can trade back from 31 and secure both a day 2 and 3 pick, you got to take your top-end talent at 31. You can't get cute with it. But that being said, this is, I think one of the big problems you're seeing in this draft is small school guys. They're going to get hurt bad by this. So you really want to be drafting the big school guys. And those big school guys are who we have all the tape on. So they're going by the end of day 2. What would be really interesting actually to see in this draft in 2 years from now is how well the best scouting teams for every franchise did if they had a coup or not UDFA. Because after day 3, there's going to be a lot of guys that we have no film on from the small schools and all the other reasons you hit on. I'm really interested to see what gems come out of UDFA in this draft.
Well, they'll have film on them, but they won't have times on them. And I think that's a big thing, to not know where these guys athletically stack up to other guys. And it kind of throws off where this guy can go. I tell people all the time, really the combine and pro days, it's all about how much money you're going to make. If I like a guy on film, if I watch him like Parnell Motley, cornerback out of Oklahoma, I like him. So whether he ran a 4.53, what he did, and jumped 31 inches, which is crazy, right? Like terrible numbers. I just know, look, I probably don't have to get this guy to the 6th or 7th round or maybe even undrafted. So all it does is kind of tell me where I can get them. Now, when you don't have numbers on these guys, then you might end up having to reach on a guy that might not athletically stack up. And you kind of, you talked about value. It kind of changes that, right? Like think of Tavarius Moore. If the 49ers didn't have a time on him and no agility testing, where would it? He didn't go to the combine, but he had his pro day and ran a 4.32. Would he even be somebody that got drafted if he didn't do that at his pro day? So I think that's what makes the biggest difference for a lot of these guys. They got film on them, but that testing lets you know, damn, I might have to trade up to get Tarvarius Moore, right? We were all like, who the hell is he?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was basically thinking the same with that value. I mean, just to double back a little bit, being at 31, I think about the 5th-year option. I think about all the picks that they've hit on, and the talent they've accumulated, the talent that they have to pay, giving Parag more flexibility when he's doling out these contracts year after year, the guys that he has to pay. If he can have an extra year of flexibility to not have to pay a guy because he has a 5th-year option, something like that. I think that can help. And then, again, you do these mocks, they're not exact, but it does give you an idea of how the players stack up and kind of where guys can be available, especially if you run enough of them. Guys like Christian Fulton, Cesar Ruiz, players the 49ers can use at positions of need that are, top rated at their positions too. So, that said, to kind of cap off the first round, what do you think would give the 49ers the biggest kick in the butt after day one, at 13, at 31?
Croc said you bring in 2 guys who can make an impact right away. That's the best thing they can do. So I think one of those guys has to be a receiver, and I'd like to see a guy on the defensive side of the ball, whether it's a defensive tackle, whether it's cornerback, whatever it is. But I think that's the big thing. They're ready to compete now. They're a playoff team now. They're a Super Bowl contender now. You just lost 2 huge pieces in Sanders and Buckner. You need to bring in 2 guys somehow to help fix what you lost with them. So if they can come with 2 guys, whether it's a receiver, whatever, come in, and from day one, these guys are starters, or at least by the end of the season, they're big time contributors in a playoff run. That's the best case scenario for this team.
Yeah. In your perfect world, you get 2 guys that you can plug in and immediately trust to play, right? So if you're thinking receiver, I think we all agree that CeeDee Lamb's the consensus top guy. So at 13, you're hoping he slides and you can just go ahead and take him, right? And then at 31, you address another position of need, whether it's D-line, corner, O-line, whatever it is. You get 2 high-end starters that you can trust for the next 4, 5, 6 years. And that would be the ideal scenario after Thursday.
Well, shockingly for me, the guy that you just bashed value, I'm going to go value on this. I do want to get a stud at 13, whether that's Lamb or Henderson. I want to walk with one of those 2 guys. But I think kind of as you were alluding to a few minutes ago, the drop-off in talent after about 90 is pretty severe. These mocks seem to be very consistent the first 3 rounds, and especially the type of talent you see at cornerback and interior line. That seems to really drop for day 3. So I would really like to find a trade partner where we can get 2 day 2 picks, somewhere in the 45 to 70 range for both of those. I'd like to come away with whatever we don't do at 13. So if we go receiver at 13, I want to come back with a cornerback and an interior lineman that can play guard and center. Rich Berg's an injury that we haven't discussed yet. A patella tendon injury, pretty serious when you tear that. And someone else was mentioning earlier, pass protection. It seemed like Shanahan's offensive line was really built first and foremost with being road graders. And, unfortunately, we saw in the Super Bowl, our pass protection went down pretty hard, especially late in that game. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Lynch finally, and I do mean finally, like he's never drafted a center or guard. I mean, that's pretty shocking. So I'm guessing he finally addresses that on day 2, if he gets the picks.
So is there any way, or is this just crazy, that they draft a quarterback at any point? What do you guys think? Because listen, all right, so this is out there, right? Like, we're all on 49ers Twitter, and we know this has been out there and everything like that. I know we all like Jimmy. So I'll just say it, and then I thought Garoppolo had a really, really good year. I thought he had a really good year coming off that ACL. I thought he was accurate. I thought he was clutch. I thought he had a really good regular season. He also would be 12 for 12 and then throw a pass into triple coverage, and you're like, what the hell are you doing? There were a lot of those bonehead throws. I think he's going to grow out of that, I hope. But the regular season, I was thrilled with what he had. In the playoffs, he was shaky against Minnesota. The ball got taken out of his hands against Green Bay. You could argue that they were just going because the run was working. Sure, okay, I'll buy that. In the Super Bowl, he throws the bad interception. I thought that there were, even on some of his completions, I thought that there were other throws he could have made that were better throws. We saw, if you looked at some all 22 that were out there, you saw there were some open guys that maybe he missed. There was the 3rd down when he checked down to Coleman when he had Kittle open for a first down there. And, in the 4th quarter, obviously things kind of went to hell there. And that's why there's so much on him right now. And so many people are doubting him, I think, right now, because when the microscope was on him, when everything was the biggest, there were things that can put doubt in people's head in the playoffs. Just call it what it is. There was shaky against Minnesota, didn't do much for whatever reason against Green Bay, and then at the end of the Super Bowl, what happened. So listen, I think it's nuts to say anything him other being the quarterback in 2020. He's the guy for sure. But if a Jordan Love falls, somebody like that, is it crazy to think that? What do you guys think? I'm just interested. I respect all you guys, your opinions. I'm interested to hear what you think.
Yeah, that was my thing where, like, you know, I did a little mock draft today.
Croc started it today.
Yeah, you know,
he kicked it off.
My mentions were crazy. I had no intentions on taking the quarterback. But, you know, I get to 31 and I'm like, dang, there's Jordan Love there. And I had just listened to Greg Cosell talk about how, you know, he was higher on Jordan Love than Herbert and Tua, you know, and he had him right behind Joe Burrow. And I'm like, dang, like, you know, you like him that much? And he kind of started talking about things that he really likes about him. And I started looking at it, and I'm someone that, you know, I'll be the first one to tell you guys, I don't think that Jimmy is a top 10 talented quarterback. I think he is good enough. I think that he can win. I think he does a lot of little things really good, and he has something in him that makes him a winner. But when you talk about elite traits that need to take over sometimes in the game, where we saw, even in the Saints game, right? He had Emmanuel Sanders screaming down the middle of the field. I mean, he whooped the safety, went this way, and Jimmy G threw the ball, and that was as far as he can throw the ball. And he threw it to where it ended up having to be a contested catch. Sanders had to kind of throw the DB down, catch the ball, and then turn and run, instead of a guy with a stronger arm that just leads the receiver on a post route, catches it in stride, and just walks in for a touchdown. So those are things where, like, you know, I've kind of looked, and it's like, yeah, he does a lot of things very well. I like Jimmy. Like, again, I had no intention on taking the quarterback, but you're naive if you tell me that, you know, he's talented to the point where he can't be replaced. And I think people will be lying if they say that they don't have any questions about where he's at. You know what I'm saying? And I'll be the first one on Twitter, like, backing him, supporting him, all of that. But even then, you know, there's little things I see where it's like, dang, you know, there's these games where it's like, what type of game is it? It looks like it's a little difficult for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, it looks like, you know, dang, can he kind of get over this? And, you know, then he'll make some throws. I'm like, okay, there he is. But he has these weird games, like the Tampa Bay game week 1. Now, again, coming off a knee surgery, that could have been an issue. First full year starter in his career, that could be some of the things I'm seeing. First year in Kyle Shanahan's offense, first full year in it, that could be some things. So I think that there's a lot of hope that he's going to be, like, you know, play even better, which he played at a top 10 level. I just don't think that he has top 10 talent. And when it comes down to it, in the games on the line, does he have the capability of making those throws that elite, talented guys make? And we didn't see it in the Super Bowl. Hopefully we get back and we get to see it. But I'll tell you what, I looked across the field, and Patrick Mahomes made those plays. He had a terrible game. And then when it came time for his elite skill sets to start taking over, he made those plays and put his guys in position to make the plays. So that's it. You know, I really like Jimmy. I don't want to make it seem like I'm like, you know, Grant Cohn, who's like always like dogging him. And Grant's my guy, but, like, you know, I'm not dogging him at all. I think that Jimmy is talented. I just don't think that he has, like, elite talent. And can he take you over the edge? Same questions that we had with Alex Smith. Not saying the 49ers, but even the Chiefs. Alex Smith had the season of his career with the Chiefs, threw for over 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. And what they do, they went and got somebody else that they felt could take them over the top. And I'm not comparing Love to Mahomes, but I think people are looking at it now. Like, I mean, I have tweets where I'm saying, like, hey, Patrick Mahomes is the most talented quarterback in this draft, but he was barely taking top 10. It's not like they rushed to draft him at number 1, right? Nobody rushed to draft him at 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. He was drafted at 10, and the team traded up for him. So it's not far-fetched to think that somebody like Jordan Love is possibly that kind of talent. And I'm not saying he is, and I don't think he's going to be there at 31. I'm just saying that's why I took him at 31, if that makes sense.
Yeah, on Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, you know, we're underselling it, but he's probably the most polarizing storyline of the offseason. You know, you have this portion of 49ers Twitter that refuses to accept that Jimmy's anything less than perfect, and then you've got the group that's, you know, constantly criticizing him for anything that he does. And I think it falls somewhere, you know, in the middle there. He had stretches of play that was magnificent. Against the Rams, he had those 2 3rd and 16s. He brought them back to win that game. At Seattle in the first half, he was spectacular. I think he didn't have an incompletion there for a stretch. And obviously the Saints game that we all talk about, where he went toe for toe with Drew Brees. The playoffs was kind of a different story, right? The Vikings game, he looked really shaky early on. He had that interception where he shouldn't have thrown the pass. The Green Bay game, he only had 8 passing attempts, and we'll never kind of know why. Obviously, they were gashing Green Bay on the ground, but still, you win your conference and you only throw 8 games in the championship game. It's tough, right? And then in the Super Bowl, he was great in the first half, despite that interception. And then, down the stretch there in the fourth quarter, it kind of unfolded. But if you look at the whole season in a vacuum, he's somewhere between, 10 to 15, I think, is where you'd probably rank him. Like Croc mentioned, I think, his talent definitely isn't in the top 10. The offensive system, the playmakers they've got, and what they can do, after the catch, pushes his stats, embellishes them, makes him look better than he, actually is. As far as quarterbacks, I don't think you can take one at 13. I think, if someone like Jordan Love or Justin Herbert or someone were to fall to 31, then you can kind of think about it, right? But I don't think you can take someone at 13 unless, Jimmy's not the guy next year. I think Jimmy's the guy in 2020. So I don't think you can spend, that high of a draft asset on a quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's also not just spend that high of a draft asset. Like, don't get me wrong. Any good GM should be evaluating every option as unbiased as possible. So if there's some guy there that he thinks elite talent and fell into his lap at 31, he's going to think long and hard about it. But, let's just go back to when Jimmy got here in 2018. The state of that roster and what he did in those 5 wins and that hope and faith that he inspired in the roster and the front office, that's a very underweighted value. I mean, bottom line, is Jimmy G a top-end quarterback? I think he can hang and bang in the 8 to 12 range. Granted, he's, got some receivers that do pick up a lot of yak, but, so did Young in Montana. So I don't, I think Jimmy can consistently be in the 8 to 12 range. It's also, I think, where we're at now. We just went to the Super Bowl. It's not just Jimmy. I mean, everyone had fingerprints in that fourth quarter. O-line got absolutely destroyed. Jimmy missed some reads. The reads more than the batted down ball was what I had an issue with Jimmy because, when you're getting hit, I think I hit 7 times in the fourth quarter and only got hit 2 times the rest of the game. So I think we're in it with Jimmy because I think that locker room loves that guy. You can see how much they love that guy and love fighting for him. And that's just, value you can't put on it. And if let's say Love is there at 31, do we really want to deal with the media and a quarterback controversy with how much spite there is already towards Jimmy as is? I mean, there's just a whole area of Niner fans that will never accept Jimmy G no matter what the heck he does. Even if he hoisted Lombardi in the Super Bowl, it would have been about the run game and the play calling. It would not have been about him. People just can't get over that he was Tom Brady's backup and we traded for him and then we gave him that huge contract. And a lot of people feel like he didn't deserve it. So once their initial perception was sunk on him, they were refusing to change it. So I don't think they ever will. And I just think bringing in a quarterback at 31 would only make that dialogue worse. So I'd much rather be a trade partner with someone else that needs that quarterback to then get us stuff we can help us win in the next 2 to 3 years. Now, if this was 2022, and we're talking about some guy like Love possibly being at 31, absolutely pull the trigger on drafting him there.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what you said there, David, and a lot with what you guys have said here. I don't really even – I don't know if Love's the guy. And that's the thing. It's like if you have a good thing going, I don't understand uprooting it and replacing it with somebody you're – absolutely not sure about. I mean, this isn't somebody that we've heard about like a Trevor Lawrence or, I mean, I'm not even really super sold on Tua, so I won't even say it like that, but somebody like you've been hearing about since high school. Like you would want somebody that is that much better. And if Jimmy's playing like a top 10 like NFL quarterback, whether it's, he's glitchy at times, but he's got the winner in him, and what he does for this locker room. And what he's done for this team is undeniable. So it's very difficult, and it would really get a lot worse if that's what they decided to do this draft. I honestly think it's a lot of, quarantine talk right now, more than anything. But it's been fun. That's the nature of the quarterback position too. So it's.
And just to throw this out there too, Garoppolo has less career starts than Baker Mayfield, than Josh Allen.
Yeah, let's talk about
Sam
Baker
Darnold.
Mayfield's numbers right now.
Right, he's got less career starts than all these guys. And he also wins are a team stat, but he has the highest winning percentage. I think he's 23-6 regular season of any quarterback with at least 20 starts. Anybody. So he's got that winner mentality, and like I said, he is glitchy, and he is turning the ball over too much right now. But I think it's crazy talk to not give him another season, because he could shoot. You know what I mean? So
like, it wouldn't be like, oh, I'm gonna draft Jordan Love and he's gonna replace.
Oh no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Like it would be like, I like Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he's the guy, but I think he's the guy. You know what I'm saying?
The 49ers took Kaepernick when Alex Smith was there. You knew it was the beginning of the end for Alex.
Right.
And you knew that was – I mean, you just knew. It was a new coach. It was a new regime. And Alex was headed toward his 30s, and that was that. I think you would know the same if they did this with Jimmy, especially with, how the contract is structured and everything else like that.
Tom Brady – I mean, they look at Jimmy Garoppolo. He got drafted second round. And I know it's Tom Brady, and maybe they didn't know when he was going to retire or not. But sometimes you just, okay, I really like this guy. I mean, that's second round, right, to back up Tom Brady. And he was never able to, uproot him, and Tom Brady's still playing, right? Yeah. I don't think sometimes it has to be like, oh, I'm taking this guy, and he's going to replace who I have. I think sometimes it's just, okay, like, this is the situation. Okay, I really have a guy I like, but you know what? This is a very talented player. Just like if I were to draft a receiver but it's like, oh, I have Jerry Rice, but you know what? I'm going to draft J.J. Stokes first round, and maybe he can be a guy. He's a new big body. Oh, you know what? Let's go turn around and take this guy, Terrell Owens, and let's see what he's Hall of Famer. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, not saying that
is it different when there's only one starting position and you're drafting starting caliber talent?
Yes.
Well, you're drafting what you think is elite talent, but if Jimmy is who you think he is, then cool. Like, I don't have to worry about it. Same thing. I mean, we saw with Phillip Rivers and Drew Brees, right? Drew Brees was, okay, this is my team. I'm this guy. Okay, Drew Brees, you have some chances here. Now, obviously, he got hurt, and then, that kind of, like, opened the gates for Rivers. But Drew Brees was still playing, and Rivers was taking, number 1 overall and traded for, or number 4 overall and traded. So I think, like, sometimes I get it. Like, people, you want to be safe with how you kind of do things. But if there's a guy I think is really talented at 31, and I actually think he's more talented than this guy I have, and I kind of have my question mark, and I don't let this guy throw before half times, and I kind of sit on ball, and I kind of play things safe, and I only throw the ball 8 times in the NFC Championship games. I mean, I'm not saying they're trying to replace him. I'm just saying that there are question marks. And if they feel like they can possibly get better, even if they can't, we don't know yet because it's so soon. That's all I'm saying. It's just soon. I think he's really good, but I think I can possibly upgrade. I don't know. I don't 100% know what I have yet.
I think 2020 is going to be the year of consistency for Garoppolo. That's going to be the biggest thing we're going to need to see from him to know that, he's going to be the starting quarterback moving forward past the season, right? We've seen him do it. He's had the high-end moments. He's had the game-winning drives. He's able to make plays when you need them. It just doesn't happen at, high enough rate. There's plays that he's not making, the turnovers, not reading underneath linebackers, things like that. So that's the stuff he's got to get rid of in 2020. And that'll kind of, settle all the talk about looking for quarterbacks,
Right.
Got teams like the Chiefs and the Seahawks. They don't have any, quarterback discussion. They're not thinking about taking any quarterback, right? And I don't think Garoppolo's at that level quite yet. and he can definitely silence all that with a consistent 2020.
I think this is also a lot could be this is going to have to land on Shanahan's shoulder for what he wants Jimmy G's image to be. Because, I mean, let's face it. I mean, for me, when you have a defense like that does, like I think I said this for every single game, let the defense set the tone and lead the way. And when they were doing that, why would you not run the ball down their throats? Like, until they can stop the run, why would you do anything but run the ball? Now, granted, we went real extreme with that in the Minnesota and Green Bay games. And, you know, that's also kind of like Jimmy losing some of his batting practice there, too. And that's also how the doubts keep creeping, because we still don't know who Jimmy really is. He does make mistakes, especially with the reading linebackers across the middle. That's been a consistent problem of his. He just does – he uncorks that one crazy throw a game where you're just like, nah. But what I also like about it, like a baseball closer, he's shown the ability to shrug it off and go right back out there and do it again.
Oh, yeah.
That's an elite trait.
That's context too. Yeah. Like
that's an elite trait.
So, but I think Shanahan's got to kind of, even sometimes when a game's in hand, be like, I need to get rid of this narrative around you. I need to, and I also need to see what you can really do. So, yeah, the defense has controlled this game. We're dominating. Man, we're not going to run the ball 30 times. I need to see what Jimmy does, see what all of his gears are in the playbook. So I'd like to see Shanahan make that change, even in games that the defense is totally dominating this upcoming year.
Well, if they take a receiver at 13, I think, you know, he's going to want to open it up more, and he's going to want to let it rip more. So it should be exciting. I think we're expecting at least one, maybe two more new receivers on the team in 2020.
And that's the other thing. Sorry, I'll let this go in a second. But when we talk about Jimmy doing better, how can we expect him to really go in and have this big season if Kendrick Bourne is one of the starting wide receivers? Right?
Oh, no. Well, hold on. No Kendrick Bourne slander to be tolerated.
No, and Crocker, you know what? I know, but he's a nice role player. But you can't go into the season and say he's one of your starting guys. You got Debo, you got Kittle, you got to give Jimmy more. You got to give him more weapons if you really want him to take it to the next level.
Would you be okay with this? Would you be okay with, I draft a guy like Lamb, right? And I want him to be who I think he can be. So, but to start the season, you know what? We're going to go with the Kendrick Bourne, and we're going to go with Debo Samuel. And let's ease the Lamb along and put him in certain roles, and then kind of pick up his game from there until where he eventually is the guy that replaces Bourne, right? We saw that last year, right, with Debo. Remember, Debo didn't start, quote unquote, start off getting a ton of reps, and then eventually they kind of eased him in, and then boom, Seattle game, he goes crazy, and from there he kind of started kind of feeling himself a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. I just don't think, and I think they will address receiver in the draft. I just don't want to see them go into the season, or they can't, with Taylor, who hasn't been healthy in 2 years, and Hurd, we've never seen on the field, and Bourne is more of a role player, and Debo, who we love, but he needs help around him too. So we assume Goodwin's not going to be there. I really want to see them bring in a piece to help Jimmy. We're talking about Jimmy and all this pressure that's on Jimmy and all the doubts around Jimmy. Bring in somebody to help him, to make his life easier. That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, as much as I love Bourne, and I really do like Bourne, I actually think Bourne is another guy that's a classic case of perception. I think he had like maybe 4 or 5 drops the most all year long, and one of them was a big three. Okay, I believe it because I can't remember more than that. But
two against Seattle, one against Pittsburgh.
See, but it was Seattle. And this is the thing. When all eyes are watching, and everyone was watching that Seattle game, if you polled any normal Niner fan, they'd probably tell you Kendrick Bourne had 12 to 15 drops all year long. And all the guy does is produce, make tough catches. I mean, he's clutch, man. I mean, he just comes up huge time after time. People have a perception about him. That being said, I want him to be my WR3 for sure, and I want Lamb in there. But there's just too much unknown about the bottom end of the wide receiving roster, and we want some competition there too. So we got to upgrade the wide receivers to give Jimmy a chance as well.
I think the 49ers kind of set themselves up to draft a guy like Lamb with the Kelvin Benjamin signing, right? We forget about, I'm pretty sure he's going to compete with a Marquise Goodwin, with Richie James, kind of maybe for that kind of speed role, right? I talked about Judy and Ruggs, who I feel are a little bit more complimentary type guys, right? So maybe he's trying to set it up with, hey, let's get this speed guy, who can, you know, run a little bit of routes from the slot and the outside and do these things to kind of stretch the field. But my big dogs, I want Lamb, I want Debo. And maybe that's what they're kind of setting this up for.
Yeah, I think the craziest stat on Kendrick Bourne, you know, he had 36 catches on the year, 28 went for a first down or a touchdown. So aside from the drops, he was clutch when you needed him in the red zone and on the money down third down. Made a lot of big plays.
Yeah,
but I
he's been
agree.
the red zone guy for a while.
Yeah.
So we have some fan questions. If you guys are down, I figure we switch to some fan Q&A.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. So this first one comes from Niners Ginger at WS Irwin 33. She wants to know, how serious was the Joe retiring rumor, and do you think we go offensive tackle at 13? Our tacklers are vital in this offense, but does School or Coleman not factor in as more than backups?
Sounds like it's very serious. I mean, you guys might have talked to some of these guys more than me, but I was listening to, I think it was like Matt Mayoko or Barrows, and he was like, oh, I think he's like 50-50 like on retirement. I'm like, damn, like I had to rewind it, like, who are they talking about? Like, they're talking about Joe Staley? Like, where is this coming from? But, you know, as far as drafting a tackle, I kind of like Brunskill. Like, he was like the 49ers highest, I put it in the paper, but he was like the highest graded offensive lineman, like not just tackle, highest graded offensive lineman 49ers in his 7 starts. That's including 2 starts at guard and 1 that was against goddamn Aaron Donald. You know, but outside that, he was the highest graded pass protector for the 49ers. So, you know, maybe he started talking about elite talent, and if you have an opportunity to get an elite talent to tackle, maybe you get it. But if you go a different way and a guy like Brunskill is the one that fills in, it seemed like he kind of was solid. Like, he kind of held his own, right? And then on top of that, you have the School who, hey, let's see if he can take a year or 2 jump. You have Sean Coleman, right? That's his name, like the one that got hurt. You know, you have him coming back, and that was to start the season, that was your swing tackle. So I think they're kind of our guys that they like. If they do go, you know, and draft a tackle, it's probably because that's an elite, talented guy. But I think there are things in place to where if they didn't just address offensive tackle, I think they kind of have the guys in the room right now.
Yeah, I think the Joe Staley rumor should be taken seriously. He had the fibula injury to start the season last year. He missed a bunch of games there. Then as he was coming back, he had the finger injury. And so, he's had a roller coaster career with the 49ers. Obviously, he was part of the Harbaugh era highs. Then he was part of the Tom Sula, Chip Kelly era lows. Then again now, you know, to make it all the way to the Super Bowl and to lose in the fashion that they did is definitely got to take a toll on him. And one of the things I didn't know but was reading about was he was actually in the facility because he was rehabbing some injuries until they closed it with, all the quarantine-related stuff. So I didn't know he was still battling injuries and rehabbing and whatnot. So it's got to be tough being, you know, a veteran at that stage and wanting to come back. So I would definitely take the rumors seriously. As far as taking a tackle at number 13, again, like I mentioned, there's 4 top guys, and looking at the draft order, those guys would have to probably get past, you know, Arizona, Cleveland, and the Jets, you know, are the teams that would likely take a tackle. So, you know, the guy that you like would have to slide past those teams, and I just don't see that happening. And so, like Croc mentioned, I think you roll with the guys on the roster and, take care of that in the future.
I'll keep this one real short because I think it's something about what you just hit on towards the end. It's quarantine. You know, when I first heard about Staley possibly retiring, I did laugh it off. I'm like, there's no way. The guy's, you know, played great, played elite last year when he came back from his injury. But let's be serious. You know, whose priorities have not changed in the last 45 days here on a personal level? You know, it's like, even, you know, if he was motivated and if he was on the fence, like, how hard is it to get in the gym right now, be in your normal routine as a player, let alone a veteran coming off injury? So at first I didn't take it seriously, and now here we are, you know, 30 plus days in the shelter in place, and a lot of my own priorities have changed, and I can see some more thoughts happening with Staley, and I just trust in his relationship with the Niners and John Lynch to let them know exactly what his intentions are. So that's why if I do see a tackle drafted at 13, you can pretty much count on there's a Staley retirement announcement coming shortly after the draft.
Agree with everything everyone said, and definitely we'll find out if he does go, how much faith they have in Brunskill in school. But we'll see what happens. That it will be obviously extremely telling if a tackle is taken early. But I think for this, just have to kind of wait and see.
Yeah. Crazy to think about Joe Staley, incredible career, all-time decade team.
And has anybody, when you look at Staley's career, I think he's played 13 seasons. He's had been on a team with 6 seasons of 10 plus losses, 4 seasons of 11 plus wins. He's had 2 Super Bowl losses. He's had 5 first team All Pros, I think, 6 Pro Bowls. He's had this amazing up and down career. Nobody deserved a championship more than him. He's been an all-time Niner. He's been through the lows. He's been through the highs. Just an amazing career as a Niner. So however he goes out, he's definitely loved by the fan base. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Al. Our next one comes from Claudio Fernandez. If Lamb and Judy are off the board at 13, what do you do? Pick up Ruggs, or do we turn to defense and select Kinlaw or Henderson?
Well, like I said, I think Henderson. Yep, that would be my pick.
Henderson.
It would be one of the defensive guys, either Kinlaw or Henderson. Would not go Ruggs at 13.
Preference between the corner or the tackle?
Ooh, I would lean the corner.
Tackle.
Yeah. Kinlaw looks interesting. I know that would definitely cause a riot. But yeah, I mean, if he's a good player.
That's how they're built, right? That's how they won this year, was that defensive line. You had the 2 guys coming off the edge and the 2 studs, Armstead and Buckner, and that's how they were built. That's how they won games. So maybe they want to plug that right back in and keep that unit dominant. We'll see.
Yeah, I agree that, what we really saw the defensive line is once the depth got tested and the rotation slowed down, you did see, them having less results getting actually to the quarterback. So if they go Kinlaw at 13, that doesn't shock me at all. But to me, it's either Henderson, Kinlaw, or then trade back. And one thing I think actually really creative that we see Lynch do, if he does do a trade back, is he really aiming for 2020 picks, or does he want some 21 picks in case he needs to address a need mid-season like he did last year? So he's got a little bit more arrows in the quiver. But for me, it's Kinlaw or Henderson, preferably Henderson.
And just to double down in that scenario where Judy and Lamb is gone, the Denver Broncos at 15 would be a good trade partner. I've seen them linked to Henry Ruggs. They could use a vertical threat, so you can move back 2 spots, probably land Kinlaw or Henderson because it's only Tampa Bay in between, and they probably need offensive line help. So you could collect an extra 3rd or 4th round pick that way.
All right. This next one comes from Benson at the Benny Fresh. Is Michael Pittman a guy you'd be comfortable taking at 31?
If he's your guy, get him. Period. I mean, and if you're not going to trade back, get your guy.
Yeah, I think this is it. For me, to talk about receivers, Shanahan's going to have his guy. Whoever that guy is, wherever he takes him, that's what it's going to be. I personally like Pittman, but we'll see who Shanahan likes. That's the only opinion that matters. So.
The 49ers front office has never been, hesitant to go after and get a guy. They've traded up multiple times to go get an offensive player, whether it was Joe Williams in 2017, whether it was Dante Pettis in 2018. So if they want a guy, and if he's there, they'll take him. What's up?
DJ Beathard.
Yes.
Trade up for him?
Yeah. Don't know if that worked out, but they did it.
Yeah, I like Pittman. He brings something different than what the 49ers currently have. And I think a lot of what they maybe wanted Jalen Hurd to be, aside from having that, running back ability, I think he brings that, a big body guy. He's a fluid mover, attacks the ball high point. He moves very well. He can get, a little cleaner with creating separation. But, when you're 6'4", 222 pounds, you don't have to create as much separation as a guy that's, smaller. So I like what he brings. Definitely a different type of dynamic to what the 49ers currently have. And I wouldn't mind. If that's who they like at 31, cool.
He reminds me a little bit of Vincent Jackson from the Chargers when I see him. Kind of big-bodied, doesn't run you over the top. Is that a comp you made? Is that why you're smiling?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, right. But no, that's
I saw Brandon Marshall was a popular one.
Yeah. Yeah. Marshall was a little bigger. He was like a legit 6'5". Marshall's a big dude, but along the lines of those guys, and you kind of see how they win, and he can win in a similar fashion.
Yeah, I mean, a differentiator like that on offense would finally be nice to have. I think that's why you've been interested in having a guy like Ruggs or a guy like, exactly like that. This next one comes from Big Papa 87. Since fifth round seems to be our sweet spot. Yeah. Since fifth round seems to be our sweet spot in this regime's previous drafts, and we have 2 picks, name a few guys you think will be there that would be good additions.
All right, I'll get this started. Running back Darrington Evans out of Appalachian State, 4.4 guy. They met with him at the combine. You throw on his tape, and he looks like Matt Breida, right? The smaller, quicker guy. He hits the hole and he's gone. So that's a name to watch. I know they got a lot of running backs, but say they're able to add Evans, that makes Breida expendable. We know he's kind of been on the trade block. Still hasn't signed his tender, I believe. So then you'd have a running back group that, is Coleman, Mostert, McKinnon, and Evans.
One roster spot we haven't talked at all about is actually tight end. And we did see that we were sniffing around Hooper. We did talk with Reed. We did draft Caden Smith last year and unfortunately had to cut him due to keeping 3 quarterbacks. One guy on day 3, if he's still there, is a tight end named Keene. He is a real pass-catching athlete. I think you're going to hear a lot of buzz about him leading up to the draft. If not him, if we haven't gone D-line, there's going to be a lot of D-line guys like Bravion Waugh and Guillaume from Arkansas, I believe. So there's some guys there on day 5, and Lynch has done really, really well in all of his previous day 3s, and I expect to see that trend continue.
I haven't looked at a ton of guys past the first couple of rounds, to be honest with you, so I'll talk position. I like the idea of a running back because when you look at who they have, Breida, it looks like he may not be there. McKinnon, we have no idea with his health. I like Jeff Wilson. I like Jeff Wilson a lot. I like him as a short yardage back. He's made some big plays for the team. And we'll see. Coleman and Mostert look like they're going to be sort of the 1-2 going into it. But I definitely think Shanahan will take somebody late and see how he can fit in because we've seen with the health of the running backs being an issue before that they want to make sure that they have their stable. And they definitely ride the hot hand. So I can see them bringing in a running back late.
Yeah, and again on with the point made about tight ends, they also met with Washington's Hunter Bryant and UCLA's Devin Asiasi. And both of those guys are more receiving tight ends, not necessarily blocking tight ends. And like you mentioned, they met with Hooper during free agency and Jordan Reed. So it looks like they're trying to go more 2 tight end, someone to play off of George Kittle. So those could be names that are there, on day 3 that you could spend a 5th round pick on.
There's one tight end. I'm going to totally butcher his last name. It's Ogawanga Bonham. I can't pronounce it. I'll find some tape on him, but this guy seems like one hell of a pass catcher and a route runner. I don't know what the knock on him is. They're saying it's like some character flags, but I'm not seeing what that actual character flag is. I've kind of looked for it because when you look at his tape, I mean, man, this guy can move. But they're saying he's probably a late day 3 guy, but if he's there in 5, that'd be another tight end I'd really like.
I like Reggie Robinson. Like I have to watch him a little bit more, the Tulsa cornerback. But someone from his school hit me from that. Somebody actually from the team was like, "Hey, you need to watch these dudes, from Tulsa." And he kind of gave me a couple guys to watch. So I put on the film. I'm like, there's definitely something there. Then he went to the combine and he tested extremely well. So, somebody with his size at like 6'1", 205 pounds, around a 4'4", 440, good vertical jump, long arms, all that. He's definitely intriguing if the 49ers don't take a cornerback at the top of, the draft.
All right, and last one. Anybody expecting any 49er player trades during the draft?
I've got 2. Dante Pettis and Matt Breida would be the ones to watch, and Marquise Goodwin as well.
Potential partners?
Dante Pettis, watch Philadelphia. They need receiver help. I think Dante Pettis could be, he's got the skills necessary. For some reason, it's just not working with Kyle Shanahan. He's in the doghouse, and I don't know if he's going to get out. So I could see a fit there. They've got a plethora of corners, so maybe we could, do a player-for-player swap potentially.
Beathard would be another guy throwing that mix, although it would be very late day 3 pick. But I definitely think you're going to see some players traded for picks, especially if the goal is to stand pat at 31 and take the top-end talent. Definitely get whatever day 2 and 3 picks you can by trading guys that just don't have a long-term role here.
Yeah, you guys covered it. Those are the names. If a Niners player goes, I think it's going to be somebody like Breida, somebody like Pettis. Obviously, they'd love to get rid of Marquise Goodwin right now, from what it looks like anyway. So I think it'll definitely be one of those 4 that you mentioned if a trade goes down.
All right, I think that'll do it for our show here. I mean, that'll be a wrap. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for coming in and sharing your time with us, and everyone at home, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. You can follow each of these guys on Twitter, interact with them, follow up on these conversations if you have any questions, and you can follow and subscribe to all our channels. We're on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. So until next time, thank you.